Hi everyone, I'm Anupam. I'll be your moderator for this event. So we're talking about SMEs, bottlenecks and realities. And we're so honored to have such an esteemed panelist with us. Just to set the background for a quick while, SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises, they represent innovation, entrepreneurship, employment and growth. One to Watch has been working with SMEs for the better half of a decade. And we're still plagued with so many bottlenecks. And while the topic is so broad that we could go on for hours and hours, what we want to do today, this afternoon, is actually focus on what your individual expertises are and the sectors you're from, so that we can have a more condensed form and explore a rich discussion where we look at ways of inclusive SME growth. Just to get things started, maybe I'll start with Kritika from Sweet Fix. I've tried your popsicles. Once I start, I can't seem to stop. There are so many flavors, fruity, creamy. And it's been such a pleasure to be with you in this journey through the COVID fund. You've tripled your production capacity, all the nooks and corners. I see another Sweet Fix outlet. You're doing parties. You're also doing winter items. So all of this through the COVID fund, I just want to know a bit more from you is your journey, given your experience now. What do you think was lacking before? And what are those things that you could possibly think about?
I'm from Sweet Fix, and we do natural popsicles, so natural fruit popsicles. So just think of ice cream on a stick that's made up of fruits, so it's natural fruit ice cream, right? We started in late 2018, so it was the winter of 2018, and we had just started, and we're new, like vibrant people just wanting to do something, right? So, but we didn't know a lot, to be honest, like to know where our weaknesses was. I didn't know. I wanted to do everything perfect. My business partner wanted to do everything perfect. And at that time, we didn't really want to fail. And then we're just going, and not looking back and learning from our mistakes. And what happened was we're just limited to one outlet, and that was it. We just wanted to just perfect on that. So we didn't really have a vision to scale or a vision to go broader and further and do more things. We're just very satisfied with bringing out a quality product. And what made me the happiest was just people praising Sweet Fix, right? That was it. That was the dream. But during COVID, we were so taken aback because we didn't really have the finance to take us through. We had employees that we needed to pay, we had rent we needed to pay, and we also had a vision to get somewhere at the end of that year, but we couldn't really do that. And thankfully, with the COVID fund, it was really an eye-opener, because not just the funding, as Subrinati already mentioned, even the business development support and the networks that we received were like, it was a great pleasure to be with them, because it really opened our eyes to the potential of our own brand and the quality of our own products. And it really gave us a breathing space to like catch up, gasp for air. We're gasping for air, and then we caught up, and then we could really clearly see that, okay, this is where we want to take it in the next 2 years, right? So after the fund, we really think that that was the fire that ignited within us that, okay, we have to maintain quality, but there are so many other things, like 10 things, 15 things, 20 things that I have to be thinking of as a small enterprise owner, right? I can't just be satisfied with the quality and just people liking my product. And from then, we're still experimenting. We still do prioritize the quality of our products, but we are exploring on how we can be bigger, how can we do things better, how can we create more systems that make our products better, and even our employees happy for that matter. So that has been the process. And during COVID, we were actually really close to even shutting down. So we're shutting down our outlet, and we just wanted to do a small cloud kitchen and then just supply online. But I think with the fund, I really like the word breathing space. I don't know, it was yours, Subrinati, but yeah, it really gave us that breathing space so that we could feel secure. We could pay off the salaries of our employees, pay off the rent for 3 months, and that 3 months was like really life-changing for us. And then now we're planning to grow and scale, and that's the direction that we're headed at.
Just want to pivot from there to Anupji. It's been such a pleasure working with Laxmi Bank, and Kritika, she also said debt and BDS, so access to growth capital. SMEs still in the missing middle, high credit risk, usually low governance standards. So in light of all that, maybe banks do have a preference for, may have a low risk appetite. So in light of all of this, how are banks actually facilitating credit to these SMEs vis-a-vis COVID fund and outside COVID fund as well?
Thank you, Anupam. I actually don't agree these days with this jargon, the missing middle. To me personally, it's the mid part of the sandwich and everybody wants to have a bite of it, right? So it's not that banks are not keen or are not focusing on the small and medium enterprises. Actually, whole of the financial institution is seriously focused on growing this particular segment. Previously, it used to be the corporates, large corporates and all because of their higher credit rating, and there is this sound credit track record, right? But now we've come to a time where these corporates are actually less profitable from the bank's perspective because of their track record and because of the multi-banking relationship they have. They generally have a higher bargaining power. So there will be banks will probably have to lend at a lower rate, right? And also, if you consider that, if you compare that with, say, lending to a small medium enterprise, there the customers tend to be, I might be risking this, but tend to be slightly less sensitive in terms of pricing. And also, the current context, the lack of liquidity, the drying up of the liquidity, there is this inherited risk of taking exposures on large corporates. So when you have your borrowers in fragmented segment, so then it's easier to manage your portfolio, right? And also in terms of security, I think the hit that you take from a loan going bad in corporate and the same hit if you take in an exposure to a small medium enterprise is like totally different. And also there is, in addition to the soft collateral, generally, I don't know if it's a good thing, but the reality is the small medium enterprise loans tends to be secured more. So I think it's not that banks are missing out on this segment.
There's increase in SME lending, increase from branches as well. So when you reach out to these companies or when they reach out to you and you start processing the loans, what are some of the impediments that slows down the loan processing or even leads to denial of dispersal of loans?
Yes. The one of the primary, there's issues at the both ends in terms of, having said that, we are growing in the small medium enterprise sector, but not at the pace we'd want, right? And I see a few issues from a borrower's point, like one of our presenters presented, there's issue of this transparency or proper accounting, bookkeeping and all, right? And there's also this lack of data integrity. And there is issues with source of truth and management expertise with regards to the planning and execution of their business, their access to the market, etc. It's there, the presentation of the financial accounts and all that's there. But there is also a severe gap in terms of skills that we as bankers have.
Thanks so much. We've talked about some of those limitations, and in our experience, I think legal is also one of those larger aspects. Through COVID fund, if you saw the earlier chart, one of the largest number of interventions were legal interventions. And companies in general are often seem to be unaware of what legal compliances that they need to do, be it yearly basis or on a periodic basis. So Anushka, just wanted to understand your perspective as to where does this actually stem from in those SMEs?
This is something that we at our firm keep discussing when we meet a startup business or an entrepreneur. There are certain limitations on both the ends, from the lawyer's end and the entrepreneur's end, in actually coming and seeking a legal consultant's advice in, starting a business, operating it, and taking it to a safe landing space. I would say that legal literacy is a major problem right now. When an entrepreneur has an idea and starts blooming that idea and comes up with a business, they would be more focused with scaling their sales, their branding, and making sure that the product reaches the customers while legal support would be something that's in the back end. It does not increase your sales specifically. So at that point, that would not be something that anybody would assume it's necessary, or it would just help your business at that point. But at some point, you would want more finances, you would want, as he said, you would want bank loans, you would go to a bank, you would tell them, I need loans, they would look for numbers, there's no proper bookkeeping, there's no proper legal documentations, and that's when you come back to us. And by then, it's too late, because you are subject to hefty fines, you are subject to a lot of other regulatory obligations which you could have just avoided had you gone to a lawyer. So the second reason that I would like to tell why this gap exists is because there is an assumption that lawyers are expensive and it's very difficult to hire a lawyer. And it's not only the cost of the lawyers that's expensive, there is an assumption that the things that the lawyers would ask you to do would be expensive as well. And then there are also involvement of non-legal professionals providing legal services, which tends to distort the entire scope of legal services, where there would be standardized formats and that would be passed over to all the entrepreneurs in the same format. Everybody would assume this can be solved through this one basic document, and it's not going to solve it that way. So I assume, there are a lot of things which affects the entrepreneurs coming to us and our reluctance in, actually dealing with them, because at the end of the day, it comes to the cost and reluctance of the entrepreneurs actually wanting to acquire services from the lawyers as well.
I want to ask Rahul ji from Pycus Holdings. We've gone on and on with so many companies designing their branding guidelines, looking after their logos. They want cows. You're putting cows in their packages. So Pycus has worked with the likes of Dabur and national level brands like Pearl Rice. But you've also worked with relatively smaller companies, especially through the COVID fund as well. What do you think are some of the similarities that these companies share? And how can we support these companies, these SMEs, to build that framework and become Daburs of the future?
I would like to point out on similarities I see in terms of successful SMEs and successful large enterprise is that these companies that succeed, they never take their eyes off their core product, the core value proposition that they are selling. There can be other aspects of the brand or the product that may help them, but as Kritika mentioned earlier, as an entrepreneur, as somebody who is engaged in a startup or a small and medium enterprise, there are so many things that you have to see, and it's a relatively very flat organization, and you are doing accounting yourself, you're doing finance yourself, and you're also engaged in product innovation. But one thing that becomes an absolute core focus for a small and medium enterprise is innovating a product and making sure your product value proposition is absolutely correct and on the money. And the same thing is similar with big companies. Big companies that are doing good, they make sure that their product is very, very good, their service is very, very good. And that is one of the similarities I see. While mentioning the differences, one of the things between a big organization and a small SME or a startup is that I have personally faced and witnessed myself is that a small and medium enterprise is relatively very flat organization, and the good thing about it is that you get to learn about many disciplines. Like there's few people doing multiple job roles, so you get exposed to being engaged with small thing as billing or VAT management or logistic management. You can be involved with the production itself. So it doesn't become a very monotonous work, and you get a chance to get engaged with on understanding how multiple aspects of the company come together to give you a successful value proposition.
Manish, I want to sort of pivot to you. You're the head of innovations at Kazi. Everything Kazi produces is a work of art, from Smart Maka to Alchi to Allare. And you've also taken Kazi to Bangladesh. Being a tech-enabled company, it's one of those sectors where it's not bound to geographical limitations. And I want to know a bit more about, because there are already a lot of IT companies in the space, but what prevents them from expanding regionally or even competing in global value chains?
Right, thank you, Anupam. So, I lead innovations at Kazi Studio. So one of the biggest thing about innovation is we need to do a lot of research, and we need to invest in that, trying out new things and trying out research. And one of the biggest challenges that we've faced is it's very hard to convince someone in spending on innovation or in research. And I think like going to Bangladesh, that was one of the biggest things that we've experienced, especially through the banking sector. When we first went to Bangladesh, we started a prototype over there, which with UNICEF Bangladesh, which got picked up by Gates Foundation, and they were ready to invest on the project. But for me to go to Bangladesh and start something there, I needed to invest. I need to hire people over there. I need to do some groundwork over there. And for that, I had a very hard time getting banks to get me money to do that. I went to apply for a loan with the banks, and they were like, "Oh, you need to have a project proposal. You have to do these and on." And I had all of that. And after having all of that, they were asking for, "Okay, I need a collateral. Do you have jaga or like land or something else? What do you have that's you have collateral for?" And as a small organization, you cannot have big land property or anything. And that was a very big blow for us, because we weren't able to get money easily. I think I was talking to Anilji about it too. And that soon after that, I went to get a car. I went to the bank, asked for a loan for a car, and it's like, "Oh yeah, we can do it within 2 days. That can be done." So that is something that I think that scenario of getting a car is so easy, but for small businesses, investing on innovation is so hard because there's no infrastructure, there's no system set up for something like that. And I think that has been the biggest challenge for me, moving ahead with innovation in the Nepalese arena mostly.
Anupji, I think the question points to you. What's the case?
Yeah, I agree with him. Yeah, sadly, in this part of the world, collateral, although in paper is term secondary, it generally becomes a primary factor, especially lending to small business and startups and all. But from Laxmi Bank's perspective, I would like to share that we have been very proactive in lending to startups and all. And we have had products which did not require collateral. We have had built a sizable portfolio, and we've also burnt our fingers, okay, to be honest. And having said that, yes, we are now going in a direction where, yes, we might not be able to do away with the collateral completely, but in terms of the coverage, collateral coverage, or quality of collateral, banks are very flexible, right? The arrangement that we have had with One to Watch, the COVID-19 MSME fund, is also an example that even during such times where we were not sure of how our exposures would fare, we were taking additional risk on business that were actually suffering. So it's not all doom and gloom in terms of collateral, but yes, I do agree that because see, banks also have to lend their money responsibly. It's depositors' money, and whenever we come across a new business proposal, we have to base our decision on facts and documents of substantiating those numbers. Okay, so my personal experience is like when small businesses come, they tend to be unprepared. They have very interesting businesses. I myself, even during this project itself, I came across so many interesting businesses which I would have loved to finance, but there is no proper documentation, right? And I personally, when I visit a business, I know that say I can lend say 2 million or 3 million to business, but whatever documents or legal documents like she mentioned, or the financial statements that are required, they are not in sync with the actual business. And so that makes it slightly tricky for banks to lend in without collateral. But yes, we are getting to a point, especially the new entrepreneurs, the new generation, they are aware of these facts. And I also come across a number of businesses which are so well prepared. It looks like somebody is behind them and everything is in order. And yes, we do take exposures on such business proposals.
So there's a great space for pre-debt business development support, helping them get their books ready, get their business proposals ready, everything is in order, and then it's easier for the banks to facilitate them as well.
I think there's opportunity for you to
one-to-one, yeah,
areas,
definitely.
right?
Rahulji, shifting gears a little bit, you run a marketing agency that's giving all these services, but on the other side, you also have SMEs of your own, baby food products and all that. What are some of the challenges from a marketing and branding aspect that you see, and how can we support them?
I think there's this fad in Nepal right now, I guess worldwide, then it's you have to be an entrepreneur. It's very fashionable right now, but I think at the end of the day, it's not only emotions that matters in the business. Your profit and your margins, they have to make sense. And as a marketeer, as someone who's running a strategic brand consulting firm, I've seen clients, I have been engaged with small and medium enterprises where math just doesn't make sense, right? And they have a plan to scale a business. They want to go from 1 outlet to 10 outlets. They want to go for, increase their sales by, let's say, 10 times, but their margins, they don't make sense. And having burned my fingers running my own SME in food sector, I've made few mistakes which have been very valuable. My suggestion is that when an agency or a venture capitalist or any other company that is providing financial assistance or audit services, they should make them realize if the math doesn't make sense, don't get your hands dirty in the business itself. When you're working in Nepal, you have to also look at it from a cash flow perspective, so that you can get your profits and you can reinvest it in your marketing activities. And after that, I think once you have a good margin and a good cash flow in place and you're generating positive cash flow, that's when you can really plan for your marketing activities. And that is where your sales funnel comes in. Based on the total marketing budget you have, you should plan for your, you should actually know your customer acquisition costs, that is the amount of money required to acquire one customer, and the customer lifetime value from it, how much money I can get from one customer across the lifetime of his engagement with the brand. If those two make sense, you can then go into choosing which sales channel you're going to use in order to generate leads. Another thing I think the companies really need to get it right is their branding position. The difference between branding and marketing is, there's a nice way to put it. Marketing is asking someone for a date, and branding is the reason why they say yes. So branding is your face. Branding is how people perceive your company. And I think that is something that companies really need to get it right. It is not only the physical product that you make, but how the product is perceived in the market. And if you get your packaging, your logo, your branding consistently right, then people perceive you as a higher value brand. And if when there's the same product with same amount of actual value, let's say you're selling the core product which is 100 rupees, there's product A and product B. If your packaging, your brand and everything looks professional and you've invested, you've taken the care of making it really good, you can actually command better margins. You can sell it for, let's say, 20 or 30% more. That is what we did with our product, Mom. So that is also one of the technical things that a professional firm can help an SME with.
Thank you very much for that comprehensive overview. I think we empathize when we say we wish companies would be able to get things like CAC and lifetime value, and I think that's something we're really hand-holding them. You spoke of packaging, and Pycus and Sweet Fix previously worked together to design packages. You used to do butter papers, so that was one of those limitations to start retailing those popsicles. And we've designed amazing packages. I'm really looking forward to those sometime soon. But this new generation of entrepreneurs that you represent, let's just say you're a good sample of that. You touched upon BDS services a while back. Are they even aware that there are BDS services being provided? provided?
Thank you for the question. So in the new wave of people coming in, especially Kathmandu-based, right? So most of them do know what they're getting into, like he said. Okay, so they do know where they have to go, what they have to do. But at the same time, there's so many variables at play. Like I do empathize with you saying that people have this assumption. I do empathize with you saying, okay, we want to give, but this has to make sense. Like I empathize with you saying that this needs to make sense and that needs to make sense. But we're not at a corporate conference here. Like SMEs is driven mostly out of passion first, and then the profit comes in play, and it's a beautiful combination of both, just to Laxmi. So there are so many trade-offs that we need to think of as a SME. So of course we want to get our legality right, and trust me when I say this, that SME co-owner, like the person who has founded it, will want their company to excel in every front. Like they want to give the customers the best service, and they want the SME to flourish as well. But at the same time, they also have to look at so many things like the cash flow and all of that, right? And it takes time to make sense of all that. And not everybody is born an expert, not everybody is born into a business family. Like in my family, no one, not even a remote member, owns a business. So for me, it was a lot of learning from the people I meet and people like you, honestly. Like you say something and then I go back and research. So that has been the case in the previous years. And coming towards BDS, like I think that is where the gap can be filled, you know, like a company that can have a great product and maybe not a great margin can meet someone that has expertise in that and can tell the company, okay, this might be something that you can look into and this might be a success factor. And that is how you actually nurture the spirit of SMEs, and then you make them profitable. Yes, I think a lot of people are aware these days, but if they have to pay for those services, then there'll always be a trade-off, like he already shared, right? You only have limited resources, and you really have to, as a founder, as a CEO, you really have to see that, okay, this is where I want to put it because I need this result from it. But yeah, eventually, if there's a larger period, then they would want to target many things, because it's with, I think even with the big corporates, right, you have so many level of priorities. You can't do everything with the same passion, with the same resources. But yeah, I think people know about it and they would like to get into it, but the level of awareness, and we should be really aware about the trade-off that they're making to get that BDS service.
Perfect. So you've taken BDS, you've seen the benefits of it. Would you be willing to pay for it?
Yeah.
You touched upon definition. You said people are wondering what defining a SME is. And I recall, Manish ji, you're involved in the CNI Startup and Innovation Committee. You launched a Nepal Startup Abhiyan program, and there was also a quick discussion on how you're defining a startup and quite related startups and SMEs. So through that hat you're wearing and coming out of the tech space, broadly, with your interactions through that committee, what do you think are some of the general bottlenecks that you see?
I think one of the biggest, I'm a board member at CNI YEF right now, and we've been really trying to get support for the startup ecosystem. The biggest problem we see is that there is no ecosystem, like how you said, there's like you have reach out to different people. How do you find those resources? That has been the biggest challenge, I think, especially for startups who's not from a business background. How do you find legal help? Or and like you said earlier, you reach out to somebody that who knows vaguely about law, and they would give you ideas on, oh, you have to do this, or you have to pay this person, and he'll figure it out. So I think that ecosystem is not there, for startups. How do you help these startups grow? Getting that ecosystem. That's what we've been focusing on. But the biggest challenge that we've found is reaching out to these startups. How do you find these startups? It's really hard to. Most startups, when they start, like you said, they're passionate about what they're doing, and they're not really. It's really hard to find these passionate souls, and that has been our challenge right now. And finding legal. Legal way, as in like we've been working with the government of Nepal in actually establishing a definition for startups, and that has been a challenge as well. Trying to get them to agree on a certain thing. So those have been the biggest challenges right now.
This was such an enthralling conversation, from talking about passion and commercials to that breathing space that you're talking about. And we've touched upon legal literacy, financial literacy, and say banking literacy, to product market fit. And SMEs are willing to pay for BDS services, perhaps in the long run, but I think that is why we've worked with the likes of STC, and FCDO funded 2 of our accelerator cohorts back in 2018 and 19, and I think that has been quite important in building an ecosystem that we talk about, where entrepreneurs, private equity firms, service providers, and supporting stakeholders can come together to jointly solve the bottlenecks and impediments we see. So there's another unicorn maybe coming out of Nepal in the next decade or so. So I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.